It started as an ordinary Sunday morning. The California sun peeked through the curtains, casting soft golden light across the living room. Cookie Johnson, ever the early riser, had decided to do some long-overdue spring cleaning. She was reorganizing closets, tossing old boxes into donation piles, when her hands brushed against a leather-bound book wedged between photo albums and retired Lakers memorabilia. She pulled it out, curious. The leather was worn, edges frayed, but the initials EJ were still faintly visible on the cover. She smiled. Irvin Johnson. It had to be something Magic once used. She settled onto the couch and opened it. At first it was nothing more than a collection of dated scribbles, practice schedules, game stats, motivational quotes, a few quick notes about new plays, teammates' quirks, and hotel room frustrations. But a few pages in, the tone shifted. Cookie leaned forward. Cookie. November 10th, 1979. They cheered for me tonight, but I couldn't stop thinking about how alone I felt walking back to the hotel room. I miss Cookie. I wonder if she knows how much. She froze. This wasn't a planner. It was a journal. Magic's private thoughts. She turned another page. I keep smiling in interviews. They think I've got it all together. I don't. I feel like I'm running from something every time I step onto the court. What if I let everyone down? Her heartbeat quickened. These were words Magic had never spoken aloud. Not to her, not to anyone. Before we go deeper into this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life narratives that inspire and move you. Your support helps us bring these untold journeys to life. Cookie rested the book on her lap, eyes fixed on the last sentence she read. She remembered those early days, the flashy lights, the pressure, the distance. They were still figuring things out back then, her trying to understand the demands of his growing fame, him struggling to find balance between stardom and self. She turned another page. December 5th, 1979. Coach says I'm a leader. I feel like a fraud. Everyone looks at me like I have answers. I barely know what I'm doing. Sometimes I just want to go home and talk to Cookie. But would she get it? Would she still want me if she saw how scared I am? A wave of emotion surged through her. How many times had she misread his silence as coldness? How many arguments had ended in frustration because neither of them had the language to express the weight they were carrying? She kept reading. I see her in the crowd sometimes, and it steadies me, like a lighthouse. But I'm too proud to say it. Maybe I'm scared that if I tell her, she'll realize I'm not the man she thinks I am. Cookie clutched the journal, now trembling in her hands. This wasn't just nostalgia. This was discovery. These pages weren't written for anyone's eyes but his own, unguarded, raw, and utterly human. She stood up, slowly, cradling the book to her chest. Her breathing was shallow, her throat tight. A memory flashed. Young Magic at the kitchen table, laughing, acting invincible. Now she realized the bravado had been a shield. She sat back down and turned another page. I don't know how long I can do this without breaking, but every time I think of Cookie's smile, I decide to give it one more game. The tears came then, without resistance. Not out of sadness, but reverence. For the boy he had been, for the man he became, and for the version of him she was just now beginning to truly understand. Cookie hadn't intended to read the entire journal that day, but something about those entries, so vulnerable, so unlike the Magic the world thought they knew, pulled her in deeper with every turn of the page. She returned to the couch, book in hand, a soft blanket over her knees. Outside, the day moved forward. Inside, time froze as she journeyed backward into a world few had ever glimpsed. January 2nd, 1980. They call me Magic like I'm supposed to be superhuman, but I still get nervous. My hands shake before big games. Sometimes I fake confidence just to survive the pre-game interview. Cookie shook her head gently, blinking through tears. To the world, Magic was the man who made the game look effortless. But here he was, a young man trying to reconcile two identities, the beaming icon on the court and the uncertain soul off it. I miss Cookie. I wonder if she ever feels lonely. I wish I could tell her that I do too, but I don't know how. My words get stuck between my heart and my mouth. She paused, stunned by how familiar those lines felt. She had felt lonely, more times than she could count. They were young, barely out of college, and while the cameras followed him from city to city, Cookie was left behind with only phone calls and tabloids to piece together his life. She remembered the nights she cried herself to sleep, unsure of where they stood. His distance had felt like dismissal. Now she understood it had been fear. I keep wondering if I'm enough. For the team, for the fans. For Cookie. What if she realizes I'm not this superhero everyone sees? The page trembled in her grip. For decades, Magic had been larger than life. But these entries showed a young man wrestling with self-worth, struggling to meet the expectations of a world that only wanted his smile and Showtime brilliance. Behind every no-look pass was a heart questioning whether it belonged. Cookie closed her eyes. She could still hear the echo of old arguments, the misunderstandings, the slammed doors, the nights apart. But now, those moments reappeared differently. The silence between them hadn't been distance. It had been a cry for connection he didn't know how to voice. One entry made her breath catch. February 14th, 1980. I didn't call her today. I wanted to. I bought the flowers. But then I read a headline that made me feel like a joke. I stared at the phone and told myself, she deserves someone more present. He hadn't forgotten Valentine's Day. He had hidden. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "You never said that." She turned to another entry. After the loss, I walked straight to the locker room. Everyone was quiet. I sat in the corner, took off my shoes and wanted to disappear. I'm not sure I'm cut out for this. Cookie remembered that game. She had been in the stands, cheering louder than anyone. He'd waved briefly, but she thought he hadn't noticed her. Now she knew he had. And more than that, he'd drawn strength from her presence even if he couldn't admit it then. Her phone rested on the side table, but her hand hovered over it. Instead of texting Magic, she reached for the journal again. March 3rd, 1980. If Cookie knew how much I needed her, maybe she'd stay forever. But what if needing her makes me weak? That was it. The mask had always been there, the wide smile, the glowing confidence. But underneath it all was a boy chasing greatness and terrified he might lose love along the way. And Cookie, sitting there now, realized she hadn't just rediscovered Magic's words. She was rediscovering the man himself. The house was quiet when Cookie made the decision. She had reached a point in the journal that felt impossible to keep to herself. Her hands were still trembling, her eyes raw from tears. She picked up her phone, opened the camera app and pressed record. She didn't plan what to say. She simply read aloud one of the entries that had pierced her the most. March 12th, 1980. Everyone keeps asking for Magic, but sometimes I wish I could just be Irvin. Cookie knows that version of me. I hope she never forgets him. Her voice cracked. She stopped the recording after that line. For a moment she considered deleting it. It felt too personal, too raw. But something inside her said, no, someone else needs to hear this. She posted the short video on her social media account, writing only, "You think you know someone?" Within minutes, her phone began to buzz. At first, it was a few comments. Friends expressing shock, a couple of fans thanking her for sharing such a vulnerable side of Magic. Then the shares started, retweets, messages. It spread. By the end of the day, the video had gone viral. Headlines popped up. Cookie Johnson shares Magic's hidden truths. The heart behind Showtime. A love letter in his own words. People were moved not just by the words themselves, but by Cookie's voice, her emotion, her stillness, the love in every syllable. Strangers commented things like, "This made me cry," or "I needed to hear this today." Former players reached out privately, sharing their own untold stories of pressure, of fear, of identity. For so long, Magic had been untouchable. Now, through Cookie's reading, he became real. Back at home, Magic hadn't seen the video yet. He had spent the afternoon golfing with old friends, unaware of the digital wildfire brewing. It wasn't until he opened his phone that night that he saw the notifications. Text after text, mentions, messages, his name trending. He clicked on the video. At first, he didn't realize what he was hearing. Then Cookie's voice broke through, soft, measured, full of pain and reverence. And then he recognized his own words, pulled from a part of himself he had long forgotten. He sat down slowly. The room seemed to hold its breath. He listened, and the years collapsed in on themselves. He remembered writing that entry, remembered the feeling of not being able to breathe in his hotel room, the loneliness of being celebrated by millions and still feeling unseen. When the clip ended, he didn't move for several minutes. Cookie found him in the living room, phone still in hand. He looked up at her. His eyes were glossy but calm. "I didn't know you had that," he said. "I found it while cleaning. I couldn't stop reading," she whispered. He nodded, taking a long breath. "I forgot how much I felt back then. I forgot how scared I was." "I didn't know," she said. "I always thought you never talked about it. I didn't know how." They sat in silence for a while, no explanations needed, just the quiet understanding that comes from peeling back layers long buried. That night, as they held each other, something shifted, not just between them, but in the world outside their home. For millions of fans, Magic Johnson had always been a legend. But now, because of Cookie's simple act, they began to see something more, something deeper. And it wasn't over yet. In the days that followed, the impact of Cookie's video only grew stronger. What began as a quiet moment of rediscovery turned into a national conversation. News programs discussed it. Sports shows analyzed it. Celebrities and commentators quoted it. But more importantly, people listened, truly listened. Magic, moved by the reaction, decided it was time to speak as well, not as the icon, but as the man behind the image. In a candid interview, he opened up for the first time about those early years. He talked about the fear, the pressure, and the silent burdens he carried. The facade he built to survive in a world that never made room for emotional honesty, especially not from men, and especially not from athletes. "I was taught to smile through everything," he said, "to be tough, to never show weakness. But that journal, that was where I let myself be real." His vulnerability resonated with people far beyond the world of basketball. At a local youth charity event, Cookie and Magic stood side by side, speaking to a group of high school athletes. They didn't talk stats or championships. They talked about identity, about being seen, about not hiding behind expectations. A young boy in the front row raised his hand. "Did you ever feel like quitting?" he asked. Magic paused. Then he nodded. "Many times. But what kept me going wasn't just love for the game. It was love for the people who saw me even when I didn't see myself." Cookie looked at him with quiet pride. Their children, too, were deeply affected. Sitting with their parents one evening, they confessed how surprised they'd been by the journal entries. "I always saw you as unstoppable," their son said. "But reading that, it made me feel closer to you, like I could tell you things I've been scared to admit." Magic pulled him into a hug. "That means everything," he said softly. Cookie began receiving invitations, podcasts, interviews, panel discussions. People wanted to hear more from her, not as a basketball wife, but as a woman who had lived beside greatness and witnessed its cost. On one show, the host asked, "What made you share that video?" She answered without hesitation, "Because I believe there's power in truth. We idolize strength, but we ignore the pain that often comes with it. I wanted people to know that even legends struggle, and that's okay." The public responded with admiration, not just for Magic, but for Cookie. For her grace, her courage, her choice to open a door into the private world of someone we all thought we knew. Together, they weren't just revisiting the past. They were helping shape a better future. Other athletes began speaking out. Coaches held sessions on emotional wellness. Locker rooms became spaces for open conversations, not just silent stoicism. One message stood out in Cookie's inbox. It was from a retired player. He wrote, "Thank you, I kept my pain hidden for years. Your video gave me the strength to finally talk to my wife. We cried together. It saved our marriage." Cookie showed the message to Magic. He smiled, deeply moved. "That's what this is about," he said. "Not the fame, not the games, but connection. In a world that often celebrates perfection, their story reminded everyone of something more powerful, the beauty of being human. And though neither of them had planned it, their quiet moment had become a beacon, a reminder that behind every name, every jersey, every smile, there is a soul waiting to be heard. Weeks had passed since Cookie first opened that forgotten journal. And yet, each time she returned to its pages, they offered something new, some detail she'd missed, a sentence she hadn't fully absorbed, a heartbeat captured in ink that now pulsed louder than ever. She had reached the final entry. The handwriting looked rushed, less polished, as if it had been written in a rush of emotion. June 6, 1981. The season's over. My body's tired, but my heart feels something else. I saw Cookie last night. We talked, laughed. I didn't want the night to end. If she stays with me, if she chooses me, I swear I'll never stop fighting. For her. For us. Cookie read the words over and over again. That was the summer Magic proposed. She could still picture his nervous smile, the way his hands fidgeted before he asked the question. At the time, she thought it was just excitement. Now she knew it was more. It was fear, hope, a vow he had made in solitude, long before he ever said the words aloud. She closed the journal slowly, fingers tracing the cover. That night, after dinner, Magic asked her to sit with him on the patio. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but it was the softness in his eyes that drew her in. "I have something for you," he said. From behind his chair, he pulled out a leather-bound book. It looked new, elegant. She opened it and gasped. It was the journal, reprinted, restored, page for page, entry for entry. But now, with a title etched into the cover in gold lettering, "The Heart Behind the Game." Cookie clutched it to her chest. "This is who I was," Magic said, "and who I still am. I just didn't know how to show you back then." Tears welled in her eyes. "You did, in your own way." "No," he replied gently. "You showed me what it meant to be truly seen, and now I want everyone else to see too." They sat in silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of memory, of gratitude, of love deepened by honesty. Later that week, Cookie wrote her own reflection to accompany the journal. She talked about the importance of listening, of patience, of giving people space to share their truth, even if it comes years later. And readers responded. Couples read it together. Parents gave it to their children. Coaches shared it with their teams. The story that began as a private rediscovery had become a legacy, not of statistics or trophies, but of connection. Cookie often said in interviews, "You don't need a journal to leave a mark. You just need the courage to tell your truth." Their truth, once hidden, now echoed far beyond the hardwood courts of Magic's youth. And as the final chapter closed, a new one began, not about fame or titles, but about presence, intimacy, forgiveness. Before you go, if this story moved you, please subscribe for more powerful journeys into the hearts of iconic lives. These stories remind us that legends are made not just on courts or stages, but in quiet moments of truth. And don't stop here. Click the video on screen now to watch another emotional untold story behind one of the NBA's greatest legends. There's always more to the person than the spotlight ever shows.